Guys, once again, if you can, please subscribe to the channel and please hit the like button on this video. So guys, in this next story, it's another tragic case coming from the streets of the UK, and a man who beat his 11-year-old malnourished son to death has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 21 years and 6 months after waiting 4 hours and driving to a park with the dying boy in his van before calling 999. Michael Harrison's 41 from Derbyshire pleaded guilty to the manslaughter of his son in December before admitting the charge of murder in Derby Crown Court last month. In video footage, which was seen by the court, he can be seen driving his son from their home to a nearby park before finally stopping and calling paramedics more than 4 hours after his vicious attack. Sentencing Harrison for the murder of Mikey Harrison, Judge Sean Smith KC said the defendant had lied about the killing and taken the victim to a park as part of an attempted cover-up. He initially told police that his son had suffered injuries as a result of falling out of a tree close to Shipley Park. Video footage released by police showed Harrison driving his injured son around several hours after the beating before eventually pulling up near to a park and calling 999. A paramedic car, followed by a second vehicle and an ambulance, rushed to the scene in an effort to treat his son and found him struggling to breathe. He then had a cardiac arrest and was tragically declared dead in hospital. I just want to say, rest in peace, Mikey, and my condolences go out to your family. The footage then shows the moment the ambulance drives off with the son, while Harrison drove in the opposite direction to park his van elsewhere before returning to speak with officers. Harrison leaned forward in his seat, staring at the ground, shielding his face from the public gallery during almost all of his 2-hour sentencing hearing yesterday. After he was sentenced, Harrison was wearing a t-shirt with family printed on the front, and he gestured towards the media and said, "I will always love my family no matter what you say, put whatever version you like." In sentencing, the judge said, at 18 minutes past 1 on Saturday, June the 18th, 2022, you embarked upon a charade solely intending to protect yourself. This was because you had attacked your 11-year-old son. You hit and punched him many times. At least one of those blows was so hard it lacerated his liver. Rather than face up to what you have done, you made a call to the ambulance service to report that he had fallen out of a tree. What you did that morning ended the life of a little boy and emptied the lives of many others. So earlier that day, Harrison had gone crazy and launched a savage attack on his son, who weighed less than 4 stone, at their house in Derbyshire, a place called Heno, while he was working on a computer as part of his homeschooling. But Derby Crown Court heard that instead of calling for an ambulance, Harrison put the kid, who had been in great pain, in his van and drove him a mile near to Shipley Park, only dialing 999 around 4 hours after the assault. Harrison told paramedics his son, who was sitting in the front passenger seat and struggling to breathe, had plunged from a tree while they were playing hide and seek. He was rushed to hospital in Nottingham but was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Prosecutors said Harrison's story was fiction in order to cover up the fact he was responsible for the schoolboy's horrific injuries. Post-mortem examination, as I stated, he had suffered multiple blunt force traumas and died from a lacerated liver that resulted in a catastrophic loss of blood. Following the assault, the court heard Harrison stripped the home which they were living in for almost of every item that you would expect to find in a home. The prosecutor also alleged that Harrison had also cleaned the scene of the attack to remove any prospect of any evidence being found in relation to what he had done to his son. The prosecutor said Harrison continued to attempt to conceal what he had done in the days after his death, completely clearing out the family's bungalow and disposing of his van, which has never been found. But after he was caught out, after a witness told police Harrison's version of events was false, and he was charged with murder and initially died the offence, although he pleaded guilty to manslaughter. It was only 11 days later that police were told by a witness that Harrison's version of events were false, and he was then interviewed 6 times in 4 days, but continually refused to comment. However, Harrison admitted the charge at a hearing last month, and he was jailed for life and told he must serve a minimum of 21 years and 6 months before he can be considered for release, and he returned to the court for sentencing. So his defence solicitor said this was a man who lost control for whatever reason, lashed out, and he must now live with the consequences. Mr. Harrison is full of remorse for what he has done, but knows that remorse will never bring back his beloved son. He genuinely wishes to say sorry. So Detective Inspector Paul Bullock from the Major Crime Unit said, Mikey Harrison was killed, but the very person that he should have been safest with, his own father. So Detective Inspector Paul Bullock from the Major Crime Unit said, Mikey Harrison was killed by the very person that he should have been safest with, his own father. Michael Harrison has never given an account for why he killed him, but his conduct on the day of the tragic events makes it abundantly clear that his primary interest was his own freedom and not the life of his own son. We now know the truth, that he was killed by Harrison after a brutal assault that left him with the most serious of injuries. Harrison, a strong, fully grown man, would have been under no illusion that his son was anything other than seriously injured. Instead of seeking medical help that he clearly so badly needed, he attempted to concoct a story that he had fallen from a tree in a nearby park, even driving there to ring the ambulance service in an attempt to make his story believable. The fact Mikey's life was cut short at the hands of someone who was meant to love and care for him is heartbreaking and unfathomable. It has left his family utterly devastated, and I would like to personally thank them for their strength and courage during this harrowing investigation. I would also like to thank the CPS and everyone of the investigation team, their dedication and attention to detail to secure justice for Mikey and ensure that his dad had no other option than to finally admit the truth after his constant lies. The impact on everyone who has had any involvement in this case has been huge. And today, our thoughts are with Mikey's family. His death at such a young age is beyond comprehension. I would like to pass on both my own and the wider force's continued condolences. While no sentence will ever bring him back, I hope that today it goes in some way in providing a degree of closure and allows them to focus on the love they had for Mikey, which will live on with them forever. So guys, I also want to say rest in peace, Mikey, and my condolences go out to your family. In a new story coming from Hullways, a man who killed his friend after smashing him in the face with a hard punch and knocking him to the ground has been found guilty of manslaughter. Michael Pearson, who's 30 years old, punched Scott Akista, who's 31, after a night out in the Grandale pub in Sutton Park on Friday, November the 18th. He later claimed that he acted in self-defence and denied manslaughter, but was convicted after a trial at Hull Crown Court. The friends had argued during the evening, and later when walking home, Pearson turned to Mr. Akista and punched him in the face. The victim fell backwards and hit his head on the floor, and witnesses heard a loud crack. A couple who saw the attack rushed to his aid and called the emergency services, and paramedics performed CPR in an attempt to save his life, but he died in hospital the following day. I just want to say rest in peace, Mr. Akista, and my condolences go out to your family. Pearson was initially accused of murder, but this charge was later dropped and replaced with one of manslaughter, and it was accepted that he did not intend to kill his friend and is due to be sentenced on Thursday, 29th of June. So Pearson and Akista had been friends for a number of years and shared a common interest in football, and in the weeks leading up to the incident, they'd been working together, and there didn't seem to have been any problems earlier, and they were on friendly terms at the time, the court heard. Following the attack, Pearson made Google searches for manslaughter sentence before handing himself into the police station. He was also said to have made determined efforts to destroy his phone and any evidence on it after the fatal confrontation. Deputy Chief Inspector Al Curtis said Scott's death was utterly needless, a result of Pearson's mindless actions with no regard for the consequences. A single punch has caused a devastating impact, resulting in a man losing his life and a family left without their loved one. I would like to thank Scott's family for their patience and courage during the judicial process. Nothing can bring Scott back, but I hope they feel a sense of justice has been achieved after today's outcome. Crimes like this will not be tolerated, and we will always take action in a bid to deter violent crime in our community. So once again, I just want to say rest in peace, Scott Akista, and my condolences go out to your family. And in a new story coming from Sheffield Ways, a 27-year-old man who killed his next-door neighbour has been jailed for 9 years. In January 2021, emergency services responded to calls from High Green in Sheffield, and when they arrived, there was a victim who was 45 years old. Lee Phillips was found with extensive head injuries, and he sadly died as he was being taken to hospital. Temporary Detective Adam Watkinson, who led the investigation, said, "Today marks the conclusion of a lengthy criminal investigation and trial process that lasted over 2 years, and my thoughts are with Mr. Phillips' family and loved ones today. No sentence can lessen the pain and grief of losing a loved one in such violent circumstances, though I hope that knowing Pa will now spend a time behind bars offers them some sense of closure. So during this case, the court heard that the 45-year-old victim and Pa were neighbours, and at the time leading up to his death, Mr. Phillips, the victim's partner, had raised complaints about fires in the neighbour's garden and excessive noise. The couple had spent the night before his killing having a drink and watching a DVD, but when his missus went upstairs to get ready for bed, she heard raised voices outside. When she went downstairs to tell the victim to leave the issue to the police, she found him slumped. Pa told police that he had just pushed Mr. Phillips, who had suffered a laceration to the right side of his chin and deep bruising to a muscle down the side of his neck. However, a post-mortem examination concluded the injuries were not consistent with falling. Rather than a punch or a blow, Mr. Phillips' cause of death was recorded as hemorrhage at the base of the brain. So just want to say rest in peace, Mr. Phillips, and my condolences go out to your family. And in a news story coming from Lancashire ways, a Cumbria dealer was caught on the M6 by police after he was spotted driving needlessly in the middle lane. Gary Long was travelling northbound on the motorway between junctions 39 and 40, which is south of Penrith, on March 23rd this year. Cumbria police said officers ran some checks and made a decision to conduct a stop check on the vehicle. When officers entered the vehicle, there was a strong smell of cannabis, and Long was detained for a Misuse of Drugs Act along with his vehicle. During search of the vehicle, 2 large blocks wrapped in brown tape were found concealed within a seat, and Long was arrested. Upon further search, another block was uncovered in another seat, and the 3 packages weighed over 3 kilos in total and were found to be cocaine with an approximate value of £250,000. Long from Liverpool pleaded guilty and was sentenced at Carlisle Crown Court for possession with intent to supply a controlled drug of Class A cocaine, and he was jailed for a total of 6 years and 8 months. The seizure investigations form part of Operation Alliance, Cumbria Constabulary's ongoing response to protect the county against serious and organised crime. Detective Constable Rob Dixon said Long was found with a significant quantity of drugs, and today's result shows the consequence that travel into the county with intent to supply drugs. We will continue to take robust action against them, and we will pursue those at every level. So guys, there's a few stories coming out from the streets of the UK. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.